US President Donald Trump has arrived in Israel ahead of peace talks aimed at ending the war in Gaza. You're now looking at live pictures from Ben Gurion Airport in Tel Aviv. You see there Jared Kushner, the son-in-law of Mr. Trump, next to his daughter Ivanka, the president himself, flanked also by his Middle East envoy, Steve Witkoff. We understand that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who you see there next to him, is there to greet and receive the U.S. president. Now, this comes as the militant group Hamas begins releasing these surviving hostages who've been held in captivity for 2 years now. Those pictures live from Ben Gurion Airport, where the U.S. president has just arrived in Israel ahead of a summit later in Egypt. But today in Israel, he will be addressing the Knesset as well, the parliament in Israel. We saw President Isaac Herzog also there. Now, in a major breakthrough, the militant group Hamas have started releasing hostages who've been held in captivity. You are seeing there what is a convoy that is ushering, we believe, taking the hostages to medical facilities, those hostages who have been held in Gaza in captivity by the militant group Hamas since October 7. And we can now go over to our correspondent, Tania Krämer. Tania, we have just seen the U.S. president landing at Ben Gurion Airport. Tell us a little bit about where you are now, the crowds that are there, as the first 7 hostages have now been released by Hamas.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is a smaller gathering now of people here in West Jerusalem. Now, this is the location. It's close to the Prime Minister's official residence, where people have come together almost every Saturday to call on the government to make everything possible to get them released. So people are gathering here together. They're basically, watching now and waiting for the release of more hostages. We have 13 more surviving hostages that we're expecting to be released any time now. We understand from some reports that Hamas allowed them to actually call their families so they could talk on the phone before they were freed. Now, we also understand that the International Red Cross is on the way right now to southern Gaza to get to a meeting point there where the handover will then take place.
Tania, could you tell us a little bit about this first batch of 7 hostages? Who are they?
Yeah, we had, several of those. We had Alon Ohel, who was taken from the Nova Festival. Matan Angres, he's a soldier who was stationed around Gaza. We had the twin brothers, Gali and Ziv Berman. They were taken from Kibbutz, and Guy Gilboa Dalal. Ethan Moore, a security guard at the Nova Music Festival, and Omri Miran, who's a bit older from all those and who has 2 daughters who are waiting for them now to be reunited with their father. And of course now, the families are waiting in a military base, or at least parts of them, where, they will have the first opportunity to see their loved ones after 2 years in captivity. They will also undergo medical checks there, and then will be taken then to hospitals across Israel, or mainly in Tel Aviv.
Is anything known, Tania, about the condition that the hostages are in as they're making their way to be reunited with their loved ones?
We don't have much indication yet. I mean, what we know is there's a lot of concern about the conditions, because they were seen in some videos that were released by Hamas or over the course of the last month, where some of them look very emaciated. and very thin. We heard from the mother of Eitan Moore. She said to an Israeli outlet here that he's thin and pale but smiling. So I think we will hear more in the coming hours, what their condition actually is and what they need in terms of treatment.
And if we can just talk about the situation in Gaza now. As we understand it, in the Strip, or aid is starting to go in. We've heard from the UN. Could you tell us a little bit more about the activity that is happening right now in the Gaza Strip?
Yeah, well, I mean, this hostage release is very important as well for Gaza. This is just the first phase of this agreement, and as we know, a lot of these other details, they need to be hammered out. So we understand part of this agreement is also that more aid and supplies are going in. We heard from the UN Office for Humanitarian Affairs that they were able to get in cooking gas, but also fresh fruits, more items that they were not able to get in, and they're hoping for more. But of course, there's a lot of concern among Gazans, Palestinians, that this ceasefire or the pause in fighting might not last. I mean, many of them are now on their way back to Gaza City, those who have been forcibly displaced from Gaza City, trying to see what happened to their homes. A lot of their homes say they have nothing to go back to. Others are trying, to look for their loved ones that are still buried under the rubble. It's an extremely difficult situation in Gaza right now. So,
Tania, as you're speaking, we can see pictures live at Ben Gurion Airport. We see the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in the same car as the US President Donald Trump, who has just landed in Israel. Give us a sense of what the day looks like for them today, for the duration that the US President will be in Israel.
Yeah, well, it all comes together today, right? I mean, there's the hostage release. On the other hand, we have President Donald Trump arriving here. It's a very short visit, only a few hours. So he's meeting Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He will also most likely, we've been told, maybe meet some of the hostages or the hostage families. He will be, and we are hearing here the cheering now, because people are watching what is happening there in Gaza, but also at the military base. Now, he will also hold a speech at the Knesset, which is the Israeli parliament. And then he's already almost gone, because he will move on and travel to Egypt afterwards for a gathering of world leaders about Gaza, what he called a peace summit.
All right. That is our correspondent live for us in Jerusalem, Tania Krämer. We will continue to dip into conversation with her throughout the duration. You are seeing pictures of the US President soon to be taking off from Ben Gurion Airport. We got a sense from Tania about the hours that he will spend in Israel. He is in the car with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. On his way to Israel, while he was on board Air Force One, Donald Trump spoke to reporters and offered a very upbeat assessment of the ceasefire agreement. Let's take a listen.
In your view, is the war between Israel and Hamas over?
War is over. The war is over, okay? You understand that?
Mr. President, is the ceasefire going to hold? Are you confident the ceasefire will hold?
Say it.
Are you confident that the ceasefire is going to hold?
I think so. I think it's going to hold. I think people are, a lot of reasons why it's going to hold, but I think people are tired of it. It's been centuries, okay? Not just recent, it's been centuries. I think people are tired of it. Yeah, the ceasefire is going to hold.
Well, let's get some analysis now on the developments that we're seeing in the Middle East. And for that, we've invited Fawaz Gerges onto the program. He's a professor of Middle Eastern politics and international relations at the London School of Economics. Welcome to DW. It's good to have you on the program again. We're seeing these historic events. The US president is now in Israel for this crucial moment in the conflict. We see the hostages are returning home. A ceasefire continues to hold. But the US president says the war is over. Is that how you see it, Professor Gerges? Is the war over?
Well, thanks for having me. I mean, I think so far, so good. The guns have fallen silent so far. It's a ceasefire. Israeli hostages are being returned home. Almost 2,000 Palestinian prisoners will be on their way home soon. There is joy in Israel. There is hope mixed with pain and expectations in Gaza. And of course, both communities deserve to live in peace, security, and dignity. And the challenge facing the summit that will be held in Sharm el-Sheikh later on today is to really end the war in Gaza. What we have so far is just a ceasefire. The challenge for the United States and the international community, Egypt and Britain and Germany, is to really turn the ceasefire into a lasting peace. And next, not only turn the ceasefire in Gaza into a lasting peace, is to really go beyond Gaza, is to focus on really ending, finally, the Israel-Palestine conflict. Right. It is a vision for peace, reconciliation between Israelis and Palestinians.
Yeah, Professor Gerges, if I could just bring you back to this meeting that will be held in Sharm el-Sheikh later in Egypt. A number of major powers have been invited. Notably, Israel and Hamas will not be at that meeting. What are we to make of that dynamic? What does it tell us about the nature of this meeting, that the two main protagonists, if you want to call them that, are not actually going to be there?
If you ask me to say what's the most overarching, the strategic overarching goal for this meeting, is to really basically formalize the ceasefire, is to turn the ceasefire into a permanent end of the war. In fact, the first goal of this meeting, as stipulated in what we will see, is basically to end the war in Gaza, and the mediators, the United States, Egypt, and Qatar, and most probably Turkey, will sign a document guaranteeing that the temporary ceasefire will become a lasting peace. The Palestinian Authority is there. President Mahmoud Abbas is represented there. And that's a very positive sign, because the role of the Palestinian Authority in the morning after is very important in Gaza. Also because of the whole idea of a Palestinian state. My take on it is that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu did not send any representatives because, first of all, he really does not want to deal with ending the war period in Gaza. He has repeatedly said that the Israeli army will remain in Gaza for the foreseeable future. And also, since the United States and the international community will be discussing the future of a Palestinian state that is, unifying Gaza with the West Bank and East Jerusalem. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu does not believe he is viscerally opposed to a Palestinian state. And Hamas is not formally part of the Palestinian state, now the Palestinian Authority. So the Palestinian Authority is represented by President Mahmoud Abbas. And Hamas said, quote unquote, that basically it worked with the mediators, Egypt and Qatar, who basically acted on its behalf in the ceasefire.
Right. Professor Gerges, as we speak, Israel controls over 50% of Gaza, and Hamas is still in itself a military force. With this reality, what then do you think happens next in Gaza?
This is really the $1 million question, because most of the difficult questions that you just laid out, basically the pulling out of the Israeli army permanently from Gaza and disarming Hamas, basically have been kicked down the road. So firstly, Hamas has made it very clear over the past 2 years that surrendering is not an option for Hamas. Hamas is an integral part of the social fabric of Gaza and the West Bank. That's what Hamas says. And Hamas has insinuated it's willing to hand its arm to disarm, but hand out its arm to a Palestinian Authority that will run Gaza and the West Bank, but not for the Israeli army or even an international force. And again, to come back to your other questions, the question really facing the international community now, this meeting in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt, is to make sure that the Israeli army pulls out permanently from Gaza, because Israel now still controls 53% of Gaza. And the Israeli prime minister has no desire to pull out his army, because he says he will remain in Gaza as long as Hamas is not disarmed and as long as Gaza is not demilitarized. So the challenge facing the meeting in Sharm el-Sheikh today, and I think President Trump seems to be genuine. He said the war is over. So what he means by that, if he's really genuine as we think, he has to exert pressure on Israeli prime minister to basically pull out his forces permanently from Gaza, because an international force made up of Arab states and Palestinians will most probably take shape in the next few weeks. So the meeting in Sharm el-Sheikh will discuss the composition of the international force which will be made up mostly Arab and Islamic state, and of course the Palestinian Authority. And the presence of the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas is an important signal for the Palestinian population that they will be in charge of their own internal affairs. They have agency. They will govern themselves.
Professor Gerges, just give us a sense of, from where you sit, who will be the crucial actors now, and what is the U.S.'s role going forward? The U.S. president is saying the war is over, and he has a way of getting done with things, in a sense. Is the U.S. going to continue to be engaged? Is that what you would like to see? But also, who are the key actors now among the Arab states? We know that over 20 nations are going to be represented at those meetings in Sharm el-Sheikh, but who does it really now come down to?
I think you put your finger on a pulse, a very important question. President Trump means well, but President Trump, does he have the attention span? Will he remain focused? We know President Trump is temperamental. He basically a transactional president. The reason why he's in Israel and Egypt today, he wants to celebrate the greatest political victory in 3,000 years, he says. He wants to cash in. Okay, he deserves credit. But the question is, without American pressure, massive American pressure on Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Benjamin Netanyahu will never pull out his forces permanently from Gaza. And the major players will be Egypt, Turkey, Qatar, Jordan, and other Arab states, and the Palestinian Authority. And of course, the international community, Germany, the European Union, will play a major role in the reconstruction of Gaza. Remember, Gaza is destroyed. Hardly anything remains of Gaza. 90% of the physical infrastructure is destroyed. 98% the agricultural land basically is bulldozed. Clinics, hospitals, schools, the infrastructure needs to be repaired. So the reality is, this is a massively, what's needed is a massively global effort. But the major players in really securing Gaza would be basically the Palestinian authorities and neighboring Arab states, who will basically come in, but they need the commitment of the United States and the international community, and they're insisting on a Security Council resolution in order to really formalize the presence of any Arab state in Gaza, and also in order to send a clear message to Israel that the game is over, that Israel needs to allow the Palestinians to govern themselves, not only in Gaza, but also in the West Bank and East Jerusalem as well.
Professor Fawaz Gerges, it's always good to have your insight and analysis. Thank you so much for that. Professor of Middle Eastern Politics and International Relations at the London School of Economics. And while we're still looking at those pictures, this is live pictures in Israel where a convoy carrying the hostages to Israel is on its way. And in moments, these hostages will be reunited with their loved ones who are waiting there. We've seen supporters, fellow countrymen lining the streets, waving the Israeli flags, yellow flags, which are a commemoration of the hostages. I'm still in studio here with DW's Middle East analyst, Shani Rozanes. Shani, we're witnessing history right now. This is a moment people have been waiting for 2 years now. This is where we are with the release of the hostages. But we know that this is phase 1 of this operation. What then is phase 2?
Well, Trump would like to start phase 2 as soon as possible. This is why we're seeing the conference in Sharm el-Sheikh coming right after his visit to Israel. And phase 2 is the most important one if you want to talk about lasting solution to Gaza and to the Middle East. What needs still to be understood is that once these hostages are back, I mean, we're talking about 20 living hostages today and 28 bodies to be retrieved in the next days. Israel still maintains control over the majority of the Gaza Strip, at least 53%. This is the estimations now. And at the same time, Hamas, whom Israel want to obliterate and to see, completely eliminated from Gaza, he is still very much there in the last days since the ceasefire kicked in about 72 hours ago. It showed its presence all over Gaza. Of course, it's not as strong as it used to be, but it's still very much the only governing and policing power you have in the Gaza Strip. And for Hamas, their interest is to maintain that position and prolong the next phase or the implementation of the last phase as long as possible, because that helps them set up this new reality of we're here, we're not going anywhere, and you guys need us to control Gaza. We are a fact on the ground. So, and of course for Israel and of course the Americans, anybody else who wants to see Hamas out and a new future for Gaza, they would like to minimize that time as much as possible. Right. So a lot of it is also connected. The way this plan, the Trump 20 points plan works is that many conditions are coming one after another. And it's very easy for one condition to not be fulfilled in order to derail the whole plan. And this would be the challenge of the Americans and anybody else, taking stake in this process.
And then on that note, we're talking of a ceasefire that is holding, right, for now. Professor Gerges was just saying, so far, so good, were his words. The President of the United States is saying the war is over. But just coming back to the ceasefire, one, how fragile is it? And what do we need to be looking out for in the coming days, given what you've just laid out?
Well, of course, Trump wants to see this as the end of the war. I think for Netanyahu and the Israeli government, it's going to be very hard to relaunch fire without a good enough excuse. And that leaves things back at Hamas and the Hamas court and see where do they stand. If they feel that they could actually still maintain some sort of stake in the future Palestinian entity or whatever kind of solution there will be found for the Gaza Strip, they would maybe have more incentive to play along and not try to, give Israel basically excuses. Because Israel would need that in order to get the Trump approval. It's hard to see Israel doing anything without American approval now in the Gaza Strip. And as long as Trump and the Americans are committed with, we're going to have today at Sharm el-Sheikh over 20 countries that are represented. If this commitment, if this alliance is committed actively to maintaining this ceasefire and seeing it through into the next phase of a sustainable, peaceful solution, then it will hold.
Yeah, Shani, just hold that thought, because I just want to point our viewers to what we're looking at now. These are crowds gathered in Israel. People are having public viewing centres where they're watching by screen that convoy as it's making its way to what I believe is a health facility where the first 7 hostages...
Military base. This is where the hostages will be meeting their families, their first point of meeting their families, and with them, they will be, with their families, they will be flown to hospitals. This is in Tel Aviv, what we're seeing at the hostage square that are now, people are talking about needing to be named as the Hope Square. There's a lot that has been talked about, the fight for the release of the hostages. It was held and kept alive by the Israeli people, the families, and the solidarity of the people who help the families keep this on the agenda. And we know from Trump's public announcements and his speeches so far that this has also played a big role for him in understanding the magnitude of the problem and why the hostages and the release of the hostages needs to be the first, the first issue to be cleared off the table before any other solutions for the long term in Gaza can be discussed.
You would have been watching at the weekend when Donald Trump's daughter and son-in-law and his envoy, Steve Witkoff, addressed Israelis at Hostage Square. At the mention of the name of the US President Donald Trump, crowds roared, right? So people in Israel really attribute this to the US President.
ever since the war, the word broke of a ceasefire, Trump has been hailed by every name of course, all the families, but many other Israelis. And we see a lot of tension there where Netanyahu feels that he doesn't get the credit that he is due to get. It also, hints to the very big divide in the Israeli society, where mostly those who were, keeping the Hostage Square occupied day in and day out for the last 2 years felt that Netanyahu and his government were not fully behind their efforts to bring back their loved ones. And so this was a very big rift that was opening, and dividing the Israeli society in the last 2 years. And what we're seeing now, this solution where all the hostages are back, of course, it's a great moment of release and relief for Israelis, but at the same time, it brings back Israelis inwards. As the war outside is going, Israel is going to be busy with a lot of process of inward healing and dialogue in order to see, are these rifts repairable?
All right. Well, Shani Rozanes, DW's Middle East analyst, thank you so much for those insights as we make sense of the developments unfolding in the Middle East. Now, family and friends of Israeli hostages celebrated the release of their loved ones from Hamas's captivity. You will see now the families of hostages, Alon Ohel and Matan Angrist, who have just been liberated under the first phase of a new agreement between Israel and Hamas. The 20 living Israeli hostages were taken on October 7 in 2023 and are expected to be released this morning. Hamas has also agreed to return the remains of dead hostages